Welcome back to this next segment of Memories of McAdam. And this evening I have Nert Lord with me. And I'd like to start this episode with presenting Nert. He just celebrated his 90th birthday last week. So, on behalf of Mayor and Council and the citizens of McAdam, we'd like to wish you a happy 90th birthday, Nert.
Thank you so much.
And I guess the best way to start is probably about yourself and your family and where they started and how you ended up in McAdam.
Well, I was born in Beaver Dam in 1931 and went to Beaver Dam school, first 2 years of school, and then that was, must have been 39, whenever the war broke out. So up until then, we were suffering through the Great Depression, and they called it the Hungry 30s. And Dad got back onto the railroad. He had been on the farm because we could get something to eat there, as well as we could go to Fredericton Junction and catch a few gas per road. And so once the war broke out, he got back on the railway, and to be closer to his work, we moved to Tracy. And he worked here in McAdam and St. John, Fredericton Junction, Minto. But he never had one steady place, so for quite a number of years he'd be traveling. So I went to Tracy School then till I was finished grade 8. And that's where I got the nickname Nert, because it was when I first went there, they asked me what my name was, and I said Alfred. No, that's no good. You got to have a nickname. I thought, gee, I don't know. Maybe I can't go to school here. So somebody spoke up and said, "Well, look, he looks like Nert Blizzard." And this Nert Blizzard was 4 years older than me.
Oh, okay.
His name was Alfred. He had red hair
Oh, wow.
and freckles, and that was when I had hair. And so I became Little Nert.
There you go. Wow.
And then he left, went to work in the railway because the war was getting over by then. And there was jobs everywhere, and so I just became Nert. And then when Dad finally got a steady job in McAdam, pretty much, we moved back. In the summer of 45, I spent it here helping him build the house. He never got it so we could move in.
Oh, okay.
But then after, in 46, in June, when they wrote my high school entrance in Fredericton Junction, and moved directly to McAdam and helped Dad finish the house so we could get the rest of the family here.
So where would that house be today?
Yeah, it's right where you turn to go down into the village
Okay.
dump there. That one with it's the only one that's got a rock garage.
Okay, interesting.
I
Yeah.
helped him build the rock garage,
Wow.
but not as much as my younger brother. He worked more on that than I did.
You mentioned when you came to McAdam you got an apprentice job.
Well, after I went to school 2 years, at that time you graduated in grade 11. So I went grade 9, grade 10.
Mm-hmm.
I was writing the final papers for grade 10 when Dad brought an application home for me to become a carman's apprentice. He said they're hiring 10, and he figured I should do that. So I wrote that exam. I had to, at the time I was writing exams in school, and I had 2 algebra and geometry to write that day, but the principal was kind enough to let me write both in the morning, and then I could go over to the railway and write the entrance exam for my apprenticeship there. And I aced that too, so I did good that
Wow,
day.
that's impressive.
And just a few days after that, on July the 1st, 1948, I was hired as a carman's apprentice. I had nothing whatsoever to do with engines, but certainly knew it made a big difference in the size of the trains, the length of them, and the whole thing.
Now, hindsight, we kind of view that as, you know, that was start of the decline of the railway in McAdam or you know, across the country. Did the community and citizens realize at that time of the change that was taking place, or
No, we didn't. I don't think the railway knew.
it kind of crept in, kind of like technology does now, I guess, is...
Yeah, but they see steam engines after 100 miles, and that's why the railway is all laid out in divisions of 100 miles. Basically, that was as far as a steam engine could be relied to go without some service.
Mm-hmm.
Where diesels can go one end of the country to the other, and the cars as well. They required a lot of service. The cars were always being broken down and set off on the sidings, and we had to go out. And that's what a carman, the car department, that's what you're trained to do. You wonder how much technology there could be just in a boxcar. It's a box on wheels. But there's a heck of a lot of technology, and it all has to conform. Everything you do, from the couplers to the wheels to the framework that the car is made out of, it has to conform with the American Association Railways, which includes Mexico, Canada, and the United States. And as you see lately, CP is moving down into Mexico.
That's right, yeah. It's exciting news. And you said you had a few different positions throughout your career?
Well, yeah, I was, I guess, toot me home. I still got a letter thanking me, or not thanking me, but congratulating me for leading the entire system of apprentices.
Oh, wow.
And so, anyway, they recognized this in Montreal, and they sent a man down. And when he showed up, and he was to take me back to Montreal with him. Well, I was married then and had some children. I don't know just how many. But I had to tell him no. I couldn't leave the hunting and the fishing and this way of life. I just couldn't do it. And my father told me at the time, "Well, that's it, Alfie. You'll never be promoted, because they won't offer you a choice." Well, it wasn't just it wasn't an offer for a supervisory job. It was for they called it the drafting room, and from then I could name 4 or 5 people from McAdam that went.
Okay.
And they went to that same drafting room, and they ended up as officers of the company in one form or another. Wow. So I said, besides, the only job I really would like to have is the car foreman's job in Bayshore. Well, Dad just laughed about that. That was the job I got eventually.
Wow.
Only I got a little higher. And it wasn't long after that they found a job for me in Montreal.
Great.
Assistant foreman in the new St. Luc one spot, they called it. And by the way, that was at that time when I took that job, and because I was relatively sure I was going to get back here, they had the ground all staked out for building one of these one spots here.
Oh, really? Oh,
that was in the late 60s. They had it all. They were going to build a one-spot shop to repair cars here.
Interesting.
So that's why I say that the railway themselves, after this dieselization came, they were still going to put something in McAdam, but it ended up, they had a change of the head of the Atlantic region, and he just said, no, it's going in St. John.
St. John, yeah.
So and that was one of the reasons they took a couple from here, and they took one from Nova Scotia, us younger fellows, and we went to work up there. And as openings came down here, they came back. Only I had to go to St. John. So I ended up working there as car foreman, and eventually I was general foreman over the diesel and the car.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I ended my career in the general foreman.
So as busy as you were, you still found time for family and the community, because I know you were instrumental with the hand car and velocipede here, the Centennial Project.
That was the Centennial Project. It was the mayor, McAdam, was Stan Dixon at the time, and I believe it was mostly his idea. He got the spare pump car. It was going to be just went for scrap, and he got that in his mother's garage. And he got a hold of Pat Cleland, had this velocipede, a three-wheeled one, and had been, I think that had been Pat's grandfather's, and the railway never owned that.
Wow, really?
That at that time, you could send and get a kit, and somewhere in Chicago, they told me where, and then have it built or build it yourself, whatever. But you had to qualify to run it. They see, like, so his grandfather was a section man, lived up Sugar Brook, the same as Pat did, I think, at one time. Not sure about that. But. So anyway, he had this old jigger. So Stan got both machines and didn't know what to do with them really. And then they got Jim McCracken to spearhead it. And Jim, he thought I'd be a good fellow to get at that. And I was a scoutmaster, and he was the chairman of the scout committee, and he was the agent for the CPR. I also worked there in the shop, so we were able to come up with a plan that, well, I had to draw a plan and state the cost to the community. And I drew it all up to scale and said the cost would be the cement for the base and 4 sheets of plywood. And whatever labor they put in. And they approved it as submitted. But it drug on. We started a year ahead of time. It's a good thing, but it drug on till the summer of '76. Was to be built out of peeled poles, and poles only, trees, fir and spruce trees only peel good, and like so far into the summer, you have to do it early when the flies are biting good, the trees are peeling good.
Yeah.
So I went out to the horseback. My son took my oldest son, Ronnie, and we cut the poles and peeled them and brought them home. And I had them all cut to fit just the right size and stuff. And we managed to get paint and painted them. And this went on till getting on late into the summer, and in early fall. It was Halloween night, and we finally got to stand it up. And we finished standing it up, and the kids were trick and treating.
Yeah.
Yep. Herbie Wilson was the guy that cut and welded the rails.
Oh, really?
From the shop. And I was assigned to help him, so I tried to stay out of his way as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Herbie was a real crackerjack at that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then the CPR had the truck with the boom on it, so we took the rails over, and the crew had the hole all dug and ready to pour the cement.
Mm-hmm.
And Ronnie Welsh was foreman the works crew in the town here.
Okay.
Yep, poured the cement. And then after everything, the cement got set, we made Stan's mother happy. We got rid of we took the truck over and got the pump car out of her garage, and jigger from Pat. put him on there. And then after I went to Montreal, then I was promoted to Montreal and stood there a year, I guess, 69. When I was promoted to Montreal, and Bruce Purley took over Scoutmaster for me, and him and the scout crew put the steel roof on, because all I had was plywood painted.
Yeah.
And the steel roof that was on it, I think, come off the skating rink.
Oh,
It
interesting.
fell down.
So that's a piece of history of itself.
Yeah, yeah. So they updated that,
Mm-hmm.
and that was when, and then after that was updated, then the picture was put in the paper. I have a copy of that picture, I don't know which paper,
Mm-hmm.
and a little write-up, and it just mentions it was a Centennial Project for the Boy Scouts.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't, the Scouts themselves actually, well, they helped, like I said, on Halloween evening. I think I had 6 boys,
Mm-hmm.
and putting together, it was all pre-cut, it wasn't much time, and then we painted it again. And there were 6 boys that were pretty well painted green when they yeah.
But it must have been quite a moment of pride for you, and I mean, here we are over 50 years later, and it's still there, and remembering our past, and it's been refurbished. And
I submitted a thing to the town council. I don't know, you weren't on it then, were you, Taylor?
I remember you approaching us. I think it was right at the time when I was coming on.
Yeah. I submitted it, and I asked the question of the council at that time, who knows how come that was there and what it represents, what it is, you know? Well, yeah, it's a pump car, and philosophy, yeah, but there wasn't one new, it was actually a Centennial Project of the village, and, or how it got there, and why would they? There was never a plaque put on it.
Yeah.
And that was I'd spent quite a bit of time trying to get a plaque put on, but
and it's beautiful now for the viewers. It's right in front of the railway station down in Heritage Park, and the plaque is beautiful. I remember that day you were there,
and they
then
got me to
Russell Swan, and
yeah, because Russell Swan drove the CP truck. He was the last one that was actually worked on, rather than myself. I was still living at that time. Now he's gone. But my brother-in-law, Burnell Tracy, was he was the truck driver that worked with each had a truck. Sometimes if there was only work enough for one truck, they'd work together most of the time. And yeah, that gave me quite a lot of pleasure, or pride, or something, to think that the work I've had put in 50 years prior was still there, not in that bad a shape, but it did need to be refurbished, and that the people today see fit to do that. Yeah.
I remember one of my first council meetings. I think you actually visited us, and you played a song, and it was very, very sentimental for yourself and also for McAdam, because it's a great sense of pride. It's the McAdam waltz. So you want to talk about your brother Bambi Lord? We know him as Bambi. Ralph Lord Jr.
Yeah, Ralph Lord II. My father was Ralph too. Yes, he was quite a musician. When he was smart at just about anything he picked up. And when he was real young, we lived in Beaver Dam. Now, in Beaver Dam, on the Lord Road, Beaver Dam, there's no telephone. There is now, but there was no telephone or electricity or anything. So you'd light the lamps at night, and you entertained yourself playing checkers or whatever. And somehow he took a fancy to playing the violin. Well, Mom could play pretty good, but never had any musical instrument of any kind because they cost money. Somehow he got a hold of $5, and Eaton sold a violin for $4.99, I think. And so he sent that in the catalog, got this violin, and Mom taught him how to play.
Wow.
Well, then when we moved to Tracy, well, then he could play quite a few tunes. But then we got electricity and a little radio up on a shelf. And every night when Don Messer and his Islanders come on at 7 o'clock, I think, I don't know what night, he had the bow all rosined and sitting there just waiting, and as soon as Don Messer hit the violin, Bambi was on his. And he learnt by listening to Don Messer, and he played a lot. People who understand music, I wouldn't, but they'd hear him and they'd think it was a record of Don Messer. He played the same style. And then later he learned how to read music, and he learned to play any instrument pretty near you could pick up, he could play it. And so he composed this piece. He had a sentimental part in his heart for McAdam. He only spent, as I told you earlier, it sounded like he grew up here, but he was only here about 2 years.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
And in that 2 years, he worked at night shoveling coal. We used to have a generator, and the CPR supplied the electricity to the town. He worked in the powerhouse, they called it, at night, keeping the coal fire going. And you could get some sleep as long as you kept the fire going, enough to keep the steam going. And so he worked at that. And McAdam High School had an orchestra. That's a whole thing that you could look into, really.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
McAdam High School had an orchestra, and it was a good orchestra. And they played for all the dances, and at that time there was quite a few dances. And there was Blaine Thomas and Eugene Moffett was two, Ian Gaynor, another one.
Yeah, I remember you.
They were all on that, and he boarded at Amos Moffat's, and that was Eugene's father. So, but they didn't have a violin player. So when Bambi come up from Tracy, he started playing. They used to get Louis Pierce to play the violin for them prior to that.
Now, he got his nickname in McAdam, did he not?
He got his nickname here. Walt Disney's movie, Bambi the Deer, was playing here in the Old Vogue Theater. And at the time, Bambi was also playing on the high school soccer team. Whatever was going, he was in it. And he could jump. He was so agile on his feet and jumping around. The kids said he was just like Bambi in the movie. And so it stuck on him. That's all he got was Bambi after that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a stamp that you're a true McAdamite if you get a nickname.
Well, yeah, you have to have a nickname here. Did.
Now, years down the road, he wrote the McAdam waltz. Then it became almost a family project, did it not? As words.
Yeah, he wrote the music because he had this fondness for McAdam, and he thought he'd write a waltz, and it's a good one. And my sister, Irene is her right name. We called her Irene. And because my mother's name was Irene as well. She got after him to put words to it. So he wrote the words, which we have now. And the recording that we have, the piano, his son Roger is on the piano. He's a professor of music. That's what he is at the University of New Brunswick, or University of Moncton. And his grandson, one of them, is doing the singing, and Bambi himself is on the violin. And this Roger He's not very famous in Canada, you know, we've heard tell of him, but in China, he just mentioned his name, they know.
Oh, wow.
He's been over there at the last count. His another brother, Frank, who was a surgeon in Moncton Hospital, he used to come up fishing with me, and he said that Roger had been over there 22 times at that time, putting on piano concerts and all the great masters and stuff of music. I have a disc of that too. And one time, one of the later times when he was over, in a break from this high class music, we'll call it, he said, "I'll play a little tune my father composed," and he played him the McAdam waltz, explained what it was, or the interpreter did, and he said they just loved it.
Wow.
So your McAdam waltz had been played in Peking, China,
That's amazing.
and received good applause.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Well, now we're going to play the McAdam waltz for you to end the show. Nert, thank you very much for taking the time and sharing your knowledge and memories of McAdam, and we really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you taking the interest.